Today we're going to talk about a commissioning database and how Hospital Corporation of America, whom I am employed by, to whom I refer to as HCA from this point forward, how we utilize the commissioning database to help us do our commissioning all across the country. So if anybody's in the wrong spot, feel free to leave at any time. And the other good thing I will tell you guys, you made a good decision coming here because we'll get to go to lunch earlier than everybody else because I'll probably get done pretty fast. So if you guys got any questions anytime, please feel free to ask or got any comments. So typically, I guess I'll start off by saying there's probably three groups of people in the audience. One group of people has probably never used a database for commissioning before. Maybe they want to learn about it if it fits them. Another group of people use a database just like I do, and it's kind of learning as you go. And there may be a third group of people that are experts in databases, and I'm hoping those group of people can help me as I go through and show you guys how I utilize the database. You guys can come to me and give me some better ideas how I can do things more efficiently. So if you fit in those three categories, hopefully this can be of benefit to you guys. And if you have any issues hearing me, please let me know. Okay, so just want to give you a little background. HCA, we're Hospital Corporation of America. We own hospitals across the country and in Great Britain. Currently we own 185. That number changes based on we purchase some, we sell some, but right now we do have 185 across the country and a couple in Great Britain. So pretty large portfolio of hospitals. We spend $3 billion a year in capital improvements, and $1.5 billion of that is on new construction, which is what I'm going to concentrate on here today, because that's what I involve myself in, is the new construction part of our portfolio. So, a lot of people probably in this room, you have commissioning firms that commission more than $1.5 billion per year. But I would almost guarantee you if you do that, you have more than two people. So HCA has two people that commissions at $1.5 billion per year. That's quite a bit of work for two guys to handle. So we try to find as many advantages as we can to help us work with this workload. And obviously, one advantage that we take care of is utilizing a database and how we can make that work for us and help us be more places at one time. Another reason we use the database, and what we're trying to get to with the database, is to try to help improve the process going forward. Again, we have a lot of hospitals. We do a lot of work every year after year, improving those hospitals. We have a lot of projects. We use a lot of the same contractors. We have a lot of the same equipment. So if we could take the data and the information that we've learned in the past to apply to the future, that'll help us going forward, not have all the same issues from time to time. So we're trying to figure out how to utilize this database in order to do that. So we'll try to go through some of that and show you guys how we do it. This is learning objectives. We'll get more details going through the table of contents of, again, this presentation. So we'll give you a brief history of HCA commissioning, where we came from, be very high level, just kind of give you guys a baseline of where we're operating from. We'll talk about our mechanical, electrical, plumbing guidelines, which helps us out, briefly talk about that. We'll talk about our meetings, commissioning meetings, how a database can help us be more organized in meetings. Contractor completed pre-functional checklists and functional performance tests. I'm sure you guys are at least familiar with the contractor completed pre-functional. Contractor completing the functional is a little different for most in the industry, but we do utilize our contractors to fill the functional test out as well. The field observation reports, how we utilize the database for our field site visit reports instead of making some pretty nice Word document that takes a while. We utilize the database for that. How we track issues, and then a lesson learned on how tracking issues and how to input those issues. It's kind of what we're going to go through. So a brief history of us. This is a map. I will tell you the map is a little outdated in the sense that we just purchased a hospital system in North Carolina in January, so North Carolina should be colored now as well. But these are all the states that we have hospitals in, so if you guys are from these states, you may have heard of this. So again, we spend $1.5 billion a year on these hospitals. What will happen is these hospitals will ask, say we need this project, and we'll have guys that make the decisions on where the money goes and for that year. So that's how that is decided. And so we have two commissioning agents for all this work. Myself, my name is Robert Langford, if I didn't even say, I'm sorry. And then the other gentleman is in green, Vance Prim, who's not here today, but just want to show how we break up. So we're headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. That's where HCA is headquarters out of. And so I fly every hospital I go to, which is in Orange. I fly everywhere I go. So, long commute every day to work, but that's where we go. The type of projects that we use or that we build is pretty much all of them. We do greenfield, vertical expansions, horizontal expansions, renovations, central energy plants. We build freestanding emergency rooms. We build parking garages. So pretty much anything you see on a hospital campus, we build, obviously. And so Southwest, you kind of wonder why we got a Southwest plane on here. Well, I fly Southwest everywhere I go, and every plane I get on is a 737. And if you guys have flown Southwest, every plane you get on is a 737. And so, why does Southwest think that it's smart to not have different size planes like the rest of the industry? Well, it's so they're interchangeable. They can take their pilots and fly every plane in the fleet. They can take their mechanics. They can work on every plane in the fleet. Their stewardess. All the employees can be interchangeable from one place to the other. So I would like to think that HCA tries to be the same way. So we have what we call MEP guidelines. A lot of building owners do have those, but we have those as well. And so every hospital in our industry, or our portfolio, should be built to our MEP guidelines. And that tells us, what kind of equipment to use, what the installation requirements are, how to design the projects. And so our design engineer takes those MEP guidelines, puts them on the drawings, and the contractor builds them. We have single source buying agreements with manufacturers, so all of our air handlers are the same manufacturer, all of our chillers are the same manufacturers, all of our VAVs are the same manufacturers, and they're actually pre-piped. So, you get on these jobs, and they're all very similar. So then the installation requirements are the same everywhere you go. We got the same standard details for installation and our guidelines that all across the country. Our sequences of operations are the same all across the country. So if we have an air handler in Florida, it's the same sequence as an air handler in San Jose, California. So they're the same. Now, obviously, there may be, Florida, Miami may not have an airside economizer, whereas San Jose will. But all you do is you just take that economizer out, and the rest of the sequence is the exact same. Same with variable primary systems, primary, secondary chill water systems. Sequence is the same everywhere you go. As far as controls contractors, we use mostly Johnson Controls and Siemens. We use a little bit of Schneider Electric, but 95% of the hospitals we have either Johnson Controls or Siemens. So we have the same controls contractors all across the country. So again, we try to be like Southwest in that our staff is interchangeable. If we have a director in San Jose, he can go down to Miami, and he's not relearning a brand new hospital as far as equipment goes. It should be trying to be as plug and play as we can. So more importantly than the staff that we're talking about, like how does this help me, and how does this help commissioning? So you probably realize if we got the same equipment all across the country, the same installation requirements all across the country, then we can have pre-functional checklists that are templates all across the country. So I don't have to make an air handler pre-functional checklist for one job and then make another air handler pre-functional checklist for another job, because of the exact same requirements. So we utilize that for all of our templates for checklists, and so when we make a plan, we've already got the checklist made. Same thing for functional tests, which again, maybe some of you guys may use the standard template for checklists, but when it comes to functional testing, a lot of guys write those from scratch every single time. Well, we don't do that. We have the same sequences, so we're done. I mean, I've already written them. We've got 37 total checklists, pre-functional checklists, that fit most of what we do. I probably need to add a couple more as we go, but 37 fits most of what we do. For functional tests, we've got 15 different tests that fit everything that we do. And so when I make a plan, I'm pretty much starting from done. And so again, as I said, the pre-functional functionals technically are project specific because the guidelines are met. By the design engineer puts those on the design, contractor builds them per the design. So basically they are project specific, but they help us tremendously on saving time. So when I'm building a commissioning plan, I'll just have an Excel spreadsheet, and basically I just gotta go through the schedules and make an equipment schedule. So on the left-hand side, you see the equipment name. That's a project specific name based on what the schedule says. And then right next to that equipment type, I made this Excel sheet that's a drop down. So every single checklist that I have, the 37 that I have, that's all on this drop-down checklist. So, for example, you can see RTU, HW, and CHW. So that's a rooftop unit that's got a hot water coil and a chill water coil. So you just go through the schedule, find that, put it on there, and then you're pretty much done. And then you can add discipline space, which is where the location of the equipment is, and then the area served, manufacturer model, and then the test I have is similarly to the equipment type. So I think it's 15 functional test checklists or templates that I have. Those are all in the drop downs, so you can easily pick which test applies to that particular piece of equipment. And that's the bulk of what I have to do on making my commissioning plan. So it takes me probably, I say 15 minutes. A lot of guys spend hours or days or weeks even making especially a big job. It may take you weeks to make a commissioning plan. I can make one in 15 minutes. Literally the hardest thing for me is to go through the equipment schedule, and sometimes the engineer doesn't put if it's a rooftop unit or an indoor unit. So I have to go find it on the plans to make sure that it's either a rooftop or indoor unit, and that's pretty much it. So made this Excel spreadsheet, I import it into the database. All the equipment is there, just add the pre-functional and the functional checklist, and my project is over, or as far as the commissioning plan, it's made. So that, we don't have time to make, in my business where we're operating, we don't have time to spend a lot of time on the commissioning plan. So we just have to get it done as fast as possible, make it as accurate as possible, and move on to doing our day job of doing the actual commissioning. So after we do the commissioning plan, then we'll have a commissioning kickoff meeting, and we utilize the database because we have, one great thing about HCA, again, we went through all the similarities of job to job. Well, obviously our commissioning scope is the same from job to job, and so our commissioning agenda stays the same from job to job. So I have an agenda template that I utilize for every project, and I keep it in the database, and I just copy it from one job to the next. So like, again, making a commissioning agenda takes me 5 minutes because I just have to copy it, and then I have to change the equipment list if it changes, and then my agenda's complete. So that doesn't take me, so basically I can do a commissioning plan and a kickoff meeting agenda in 20 minutes total, and I'm ready to go. So I'll go to do the commissioning agenda or kickoff meeting, and then I'll utilize the database to put my meeting minutes in there. And the reason I bring this up is because I don't know if you guys have been involved. You do a commissioning meeting, you take your minutes, you send them out, everybody's happy, and then you go back to the next site, or you got a question about what happened, and you look through your meeting minutes and you can't find them. It's in an email or it's on your network, and you got a VPN, you got to get a good connection, all those problems. It just takes a lot of time to find your meeting minutes to even bring up the questions that you had. So if you have this database, if you have any database, you can put the meeting minutes in the database. You're on site talking to the contractor. You can say, hey, at the meeting, we asked this question. Do you have an answer? Whatever that it is. It's just very easy to have the meeting minutes at your fingertips if you have some, all information in one location like a commissioning database. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about the reason I talk about meetings for. Just ease of having access to that information after the fact. Okay, we had the commissioning kickoff meeting. We talked to the contractors. Next task is again for the contractors to complete the pre-functional checklist. So again, obviously the contractors use the database to fill these out, and we can keep track of these. And so instead, the old school way, when I first started HCA, was Excel. It printed out, so then I have to go to the site to even look at the pre-functional checklist. Most of the time, they never filled it out. If they did, it was dated the day before, or it was just a bunch of checks you couldn't read. So it's basically useless. They've gotten trained to think pre-functional checklist is a wasted exercise. It's just not useful. And so this is a tool we can use. So I can see it from Nashville. I can log in. I can see where they're at with it. They mark no if they got it blank. I can say, hey, what's going on with this? You guys gonna fix this, or is there an issue with this? We can have a conversation about it. And the contractors love it. I mean, sometimes they'll complain. I say, well, you can just print it out and fill it out on paper and scan it back in if you want. Of course, they back off of that real fast. So contractors love it. It's been really great as far as that goes. And you can check in and make sure that they're being completed as the progress is being installed. Another great thing that we use for any database is you can take a picture of equipment. So we ask that they take a picture of the equipment of the VAV box and of the exhaust fans. So the reason for VAV box is we're doing a functional test on an air handler, and we're trying to optimize the static pressure. Maybe we look at the boxes, and one box is at 98% open and the rest are at 50% open. Well, what we do in the past is we'd go find a ladder, go look at the box, see if there's any kind of bad inlet conditions or something we can do to help fix this box so we can lower that static pressure for all the rest of the system. Well, now I can sit on my butt and pull up a picture and look at the inlet conditions to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it, and that way I can direct the contractor, hey, there's an elbow right going into the box, we need to fix this, or yeah, it looks good, that's the best we can do. Another thing, we can check out the access to the VAV box on the computer. So, we always ask, I'm sure everybody asks you got access to your VAV box. Well, the answer is always yes if you don't go look at it. When we go look at it, the answer sometimes changes. So if you ask them to take a picture of that kind of gives a little bit of accountability to make sure they're going to give you the true answer, to make sure that it's right. And also, it also proves that they've been to it as well if they have to take a picture of it. Lastly, what helps us is, we work in occupied hospitals, and so we have a lot of phased projects. Just about all of our projects are phased. So if you got a 200 VAV box system and it's in 7 phases, and you don't know which box is in what phase, you show up on site, you don't know if they're up to date or not, because you don't know if they filled out all the boxes in that phase, or if there's boxes in the next phase, or boxes in the previous phase. So if you can get it from the contractor, you can put into CX Alloy the different phases, and you can group the equipment in that. So you can, I don't know if you guys can see the picture, but you can see there's a phase 1 above that, and then phase 2 below that, and I've got multiple phases. So when you go on site for phase 2, then phase 1 and phase 2 checklist should be complete, but phase 3 shouldn't be, and vice versa. So it's helpful to organize it in such a way, it helps you when you go on site to know, instead of having to ask the question, what's in this phase, what's in this phase, makes you look like an expert. So this is another good idea. If you can get this information from the contractor, it's very helpful. So again, a lot of what we talked about thus far is pretty standard, probably for a lot of you guys in here. Where we kind of vary a little bit now is getting into the functional performance test. We do require our contractors to fill a functional performance test out after test and balance is complete. Obviously, because we're testing for the functionality of the equipment as well as the capacities. That's why we ask for after test and balance. But we use Johnson Controls and Siemens on all of our projects. So we have a good relationship with those guys. They fill a functional test out on CX Alloy, database. Apologize for that. Trying to keep it generic. All databases are the same, so I'm trying to keep it as generic as I can. But they fill the functional test out on the database, and then we can check it out in Nashville. And we're not going to show up on site until they fill the pre-functional and the functional test out. And so we can see that instead of coming to the site and ask them, say, hey, did you fill these out? And they say, yeah, here it is in a document, and then it's useless. We can actually go through the test ourselves, make sure they fill it out accurately, call and ask any questions about what we see, make sure when we show up on site that they're ready to go. And then what we do is we do what we call owner verification. So we're verifying that the contractors completed the commissioning as required. And we use the database to tremendously help us to make sure we don't have to make wasted trips and keep these contractors accountable. So every time we do make a site visit, we do write a site observation report. And so in these databases, they do have modules for that. And so we do write all our field observation reports in the database. Obviously any observations that we have, any dates that they're giving us as far as when startup's going to be, when they're going to be ready for the owner verification, test and balance, whatever dates that you want to know. Again, similar to the meeting minutes, the reason why I bring this up and why I feel it's valuable to the commissioning process is you can access previous site visit reports. So if you're on a site visit and they say they change the date on you, you're like, hey, this last time you said you're going to be this far along, and now you're telling me this far along, you're behind. You're like, oh, we didn't say that. But like, yeah, I got it documented right here. Or if you're on site, you say, well, last time I looked at 4 or 3 VAV boxes, so I'm going to concentrate on level 2 VAV boxes this time. You at least have a record of knowing what you did last time, what your notes were, so you can maybe check the progress of what you were behind on the last one. So that's the reason I bring that up. It's just very useful to do that. So also like when I review test and balance reports, we do sound testing, any kind of reports that I review. In the past, what I would do, and what a lot of guys do, is they'll just write an email. They'll put it in an email saying, hey, I reviewed your test and balance report, these are my comments, which is fine, but then it's hard to keep track of an email. Once you send it, it's kind of gone, and then you got to file it away and find it. So again, I put all my review comments onto this as well. That way they're easily accessible. Everyone has access to them. Anybody that's on the project has access to my notes, so they can reference to them anytime. So it's very useful to have all of your information in one location, instead of having them in folders, emails, various locations. That's just very difficult to get to. So one last thing I'll say about the field observation reports is that a lot of databases you can make issues anywhere you want, but they have to be associated with something. I'm trying to hopefully everybody understands what I'm trying to say here, but basically if you make a commissioning issue, you can't just make it out of thin air. You have to say, okay, this is an issue associated with an air handler, or this is an issue associated with a field observation report, or this is an issue associated with a specific line on a pre-functional checklist. So it's really easy when you're walking a job site and you got your iPad or Android device open, and you're just making field observation reports saying, walk this floor, stairs dirty, whatever you're saying, and then you see an issue. It's really easy to make an issue with your field observation report because it's just easy. It's very convenient, and I've done that a lot. And what we're about to get into in just a moment is what I think is the more exciting part of the database that I'm hoping to get you guys help in. Well, when you associate an issue with the field observation report, it's kind of useless after that. Like, it's documenting the issue, but then it's really hard to track once you've done that. So hopefully I'll explain that in a minute. That may make more sense, but that's what that was about. So for HCA, all the commissioning issues that we have are created in the database. So it's a lot of information. It's good information that we can utilize, but we haven't been utilizing it. You know, we basically, each project has been a standalone project, and we haven't really looked at it as a whole. So there's a lot of information there that we've not been utilizing that we should. I think we could improve our process if we did. And so what is one of the goals of that? Well, it's to find our common issues. If I were to say each table get together and take 5 minutes, we're not going to do this, but say take 5 minutes to come up with your top 10 issues, and we went around, there may be some similarities, but there's going to be a ton of different issues, right? Everybody's got their own common issues. And that's great. It's based on your own opinions and experiences. And a lot of times for me, you know, I get kind of emotional about this stuff. And so it may, all my common issues will come from my last job, when in reality that may have been the first time I'd ever seen it. But, you know, it's just the first thing on your mind. And so we want to come up with a way to come up with true common issues. Not just our opinions, but like really, what are the most common issues we see on all of our projects? And then on top of that, another thing that's not really fair to our contractors is we'll say, okay, these are a list of our top 10 common issues. And then we'd say that over and over and over again. Well, in reality, since I've been here, I've been to HCA for about 3.5 years. And the common issues that were at the start of the job or start of the process are not there anymore. The contractors, we're telling them this, they're getting better at it. And so now there's new common issues that should arise to that top, but we don't have that information. And so we keep telling the same things over and over again. So they've already improved it. So we need to kind of have a dynamic list that changes based on the performance of the contractors and what comes up new. So that's the goal. And then you can also determine who your best and worst contractors are, right? So if we have a certain contractor that has the same issues over and over and over again, but then we have other contractors that don't have, you know, those issues because they do a good job of preventing them. We need to know that. We need to kind of maybe have a lesson learned meeting with some contractors versus others. So lots of information we can get from that we're missing out on right now. So this is just our numbers. So we put our first issue into the commissioning database October 6, 2016. So we got a total of 68 projects in our database that has at least one issue associated with it. So we got a total of 2,245 issues. This is all as of February. I'll tell you, I thought these were kind of cool numbers until I talked to some of you guys, and your numbers will dwarf these. So just want to let you know that it's pretty good though to look at it and kind of see where you guys are. So we got 2,245 issues total, which averages out to 33 issues a project. So that obviously ranges from large projects to small projects, so it'd be really good if we had that filtered out even more to different types of projects. But general, for all of our projects, we average 33 issues a project. By equipment type, this makes sense, right? So the most equipment we put on a job site is VAV boxes, so it makes sense that most of our issues are associated with VAV boxes. And air handlers comes in a close second because, again, that's mostly what we do is adding air handlers and VAV boxes, and then you can go down the list and see kind of what equipment falls where as far as what equipment has the most issues associated with it. And it's pretty neat to see this. I think that, again, if you guys use a database or if you're looking at using a database, all this information is ready for you to do. And once you start getting into the numbers, it kind of gets obsessive, and you can change it all kinds of different ways. I was talking to a guy, we talk about number of issues that the company has. Well, he broke it down after we talked. He broke it down into individuals, so he could tell how many individuals made how many issues per their company. So we talked about maybe you should get an Issuer of the Year award or something for your company. The guy who makes the most issues per year, maybe you should get some kind of award for it or something. But it's just when you start looking at data, you can kind of get overwhelmed. There's just so many different directions you can go. So how do we get that information would be a question. What would be awesome, and my goal here is for the database to kick this out, right? Because right now I have to manually get this information out. It's there for the taking, but we have to manually put forth the effort to get to that point. So any database that you get will spit out an Excel spreadsheet, and it'll have all the raw data of all the issues that you had. Then we take that information, we classify it, and this goes into the making issues on a field observation report or like generic type issues. Because again, when you get this spreadsheet and it's associated by equipment or field observation report or specific line, well, when you get an issue that's associated with a field observation report, it could be an air handler, it could be a chiller, it could be a ductwork, it could be light switch, it could be anything. So it's really difficult when you get all these issues that aren't associated with anything. What do you do with them? You have to manually go in, and then you got to classify it at the end, which is very time consuming. But we had to take the Excel sheet, had to classify it into different types of equipment, and then we were able to make a pivot table in Excel. We were able to filter it any way we wanted. Then at that point you could filter out only checklist issues, only functional testing issues, only field observation issues, those kind of things, which gives you the information that you need. Again, already discussed that. So again, if you made an issue on not the specific line item, then the information is kind of lost. And that's where I kind of want. This is where the coolest part about a database to me is when you get this information, you can do a lot of information with it. You can do some training with it. When you go to a commissioning kickoff meeting or even an interview, if you're trying to get a job, you can go in with a list and say, these are our most common issues for this type of job, and this is what we're going to do to prevent them on this job. You train contractors, train engineers, train all these guys on site. Make sure you don't repeat the same issues over and over again. But you can only do that if you have the information available to do it, and you have organized it in such a way that you can pull that information out. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So here's, I don't know if you guys can read it, but there's a VAV Box Check. This is a list of all the issues for a VAV box for the checklist. So you see there's 395. In the top line, it says control wiring and sensors are installed and complete. And there's 81 issues associated with controls wiring and sensors are installed and complete. That's the number one issue we have on VAV boxes, which is a shock to me. When I saw this information, that doesn't make any sense. I would have thought, access or straight run a duct going in or something like that, not control wiring. So then I started looking into why that was. And so a lot of our projects, again, the contractors complete the pre-functionals and the functional tests. So we'll have some contractors that do a really good job of making issues on the database. So they're going in and filling the pre-functionals. Let's say there's a VAV box and there's an electrical conduit going across and can't have access to the box. Well, they'll add that issue right to the database, and so now everybody has access to it and can see it and comment on it and fix it and keep track of it. Well, the issue with them doing that is sometimes they're not well trained. They make mistakes. And they make, as far as, it's not a mistake in that project, but it's a mistake for the program-wide if you want to take this information and utilize it. So sometimes they'll use an example, like that controls wiring is complete. So sometimes they'll answer that as a no when it's not complete, but it's a work in progress. Or sometimes they'll even make an issue out of it. I feel like sometimes contractors have grudges with other contractors because they make issues that are not really issues just to try to make their other fellow contractors look bad. But what that does, it skews our data. So again, I keep repeating myself on the field observation report, but commonality here is when you make an issue, if you want to track your information the way that I'm discussing it now to get a program level use of data, then you need to make your issues associated with a specific line. So if I'm walking a job and let's say I'm looking at an air handler and the isolation valves aren't installed. Well, it's easy for me to just make an issue from my field observation report saying the isolation valves aren't installed. But what I need to do is I need to actually go back to the air handler checklist, find the line that says isolation valves are installed, make an issue associated with that line. That way in the future, when I sort these information out, I can say, okay, I've had 12 issues with the isolation valves not being installed in the air handler. Instead of having 12 field observation issues, that could be anything. So you need to go to this specific line to fill out the issue so you can filter it out. So again, getting back to the example that I talked about earlier. Again, this is a checklist. This is actually copied from a job that was utilized. So you can see the controls wiring and sensors are installed and complete. That answer is no. You can see there's an issue associated with that line. Okay, things look great. Then you go to this. This is the raw data that you can export into Excel from any database. And you can see on the right-hand side, that's where the line item is. The one we just read. Again, I've read it over and over again. Controls, wiring, and sensors installed and complete. Well, if you go to the left-hand side, that's the actual information, the issue. So when you make an issue, it's free text, right? So you can type in anything you want. So it's really difficult to, going back to the filtering and sorting, it's very difficult to sort by field data or, the issue because it's all field text. I'm reviewing trends, and I may have the same issue 10 times, and I may write it 5 different ways. It's just difficult to write the same issue the same every single time in one sitting, much less across, weeks and months and years. So we associate it with the line of the pre-functional or functional performance test. Well, if you look over here at the issue, he says in progress installed, no controls installed yet, no sealing in progress. So if you look at this reality, the issue that we showed is not an issue at all. It's just in progress work. But yet when we look at the data, that's what shows up as the #1 common issue for VAV boxes. So what's my point in all this to say is that garbage in, garbage out, this is only as good as the information you put in it. And I've learned a lot I've learned a lot of growing pains getting to this point. And so hopefully, you guys seeing this, if you're interested in this or anything, hopefully you guys can see where I've learned the hard way, and you can make changes to help you guys to not go through this and not have data that is pretty much useless. So again, if you go back to the list, the controls wiring being the #1 issue makes a lot more sense now when you actually dive into the data and see how it got there. It's not even really an issue at all. It's just the information that we have. So what we want to do in the future, when I started at HCA, my boss one time asked me, how's commissioning going on this project? And so it was a trap, and I got sucked right in. So I started answering the question of, this, that, and the other, getting into the weeds with him. He's like, well, that's your opinion, Robert. Like, how's commissioning going? And so I wasn't getting it. So I was just like, well, and I started talking more. He's like, you're not understanding me. He's like, you're giving me your opinion. He's like, is there any data you have out there that tells me how good commissioning has gone on this project? No, I don't. But he's like, well, we got this database, so why can we not get it? Well, that's a good question. I never thought about it. I was looking at project level, just getting the project done, going to the next one. He's wanting to know from analytically, how is commissioning going on this project? So again, this is where I asked you guys, how do you determine how commissioning goes on a project? Because I got some ideas, but it's a work in progress. Maybe it's average days to close a project or close issues. Maybe it's number of common issues. And once we get that common issues list, it's how many common issues do you find on a project? Maybe it's how many issues you close before occupancy. I mean, it's the information is out there. We just got to figure out how to utilize it to make commissioning process go better, more smoothly. Be able to grade different contractors. Be able to determine what project went well. Because again, right now it's all subjective. It's all based on our opinions. It's based on how we feel that day. But we have the data out there to extract it. We just got to think of how we can utilize it to better understand this. So that's what we're trying to get to. Again, one thing I'm always asking for is the dynamic top 10 common issues list. Instead of me having to pull this information out, why can't the database have like a top 10 list that you can actually watch it and one drops off, another one pops on as things happen. So, but as you guys have hopefully, maybe I've tried to talk about how difficult it is for me to do it manually. That's just how much more difficult it is for it to be a dynamic list that a database can write a program for. So with that, we got done plenty of time. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or statements? Yes, sir.
So we were talking about kind of leveraging data on issues, and I was wondering, you said you have about 65 issues on your database, like 65 jobs on your database. Of those 65, if you took the project with the most issues, I was curious what you thought that project had. What was the outlier? Why did that one have so many? Was it just a particular a sour contractor, or did they not do startup? I was just curious what your feedback was on that. Just looking at your single worst project.
Well, you want to get into the database question. I mean, goes beyond. I mean, I would say it's the general contractor's not managing the process very well. That's why we have the most issues, and they kind of don't oversee what's happening. Is where I've seen the biggest issue. Again, this isn't the database part, but I always ask the question, what's the most important aspect of commissioning? And the answer I say is communication. We have to have good communication. You can have the greatest contractors in the world, the best equipment in the world, the best design, the most efficient, but if you have bad communication, you're going to have a bad job every single time. And so that's what I would say. A lot of general contractors have bad communication. They don't think commissioning is important. They don't spend much time on it, and then we get to the end, and all of a sudden it's a complete disaster. That's usually where I see the big rise in issues. So that's where this helps, though, is, some general contractors do a good job of managing it, some don't, but we can keep track as, from Nashville or wherever you guys are located, to say, hey, raise a red flag. I've done that plenty of times where I've gotten onto our construction managers to say, hey, your GCs aren't doing a good job. This is going to go bad. better talk to them, and they've had that talk and it's changed their tune. So you definitely can change the course if you have the information at your hands. You can't accuse someone of not taking something serious when you don't have any proof. But this will give you proof to say, hey, you guys aren't filling this stuff out. Like, you got to take, this is going to be a problem. You're going to have a problem. You're going to lose money on this if you don't take it serious. Yes, sir.
So you talked about basically using the data to see how the project went and your interactions with your supervisor over that. But do you use the information that you gather to further inform your commissioning protocol or the process you use? For instance, when you come up with problems, you may want to integrate a new part of your process, or you may find parts of your commissioning process that aren't particularly worth your time or valuable. Use that data to inform changes to your.
That's the goal. We've made some changes, but unfortunately, as I alluded to at the beginning, I mean, we're so busy right now, we don't have time. We have, just getting the data manually right now takes time. So then you got to analyze it and figure out what to do with it. But yes, when I first started, again, we have a common issues list. And for example, there's one that says the temperature sensor should be installed on the leading side of an air handler pool. Well, the contractors never did that. Like it's something in our guidelines they never did. Well, now they do on every single. I've not seen a job that didn't have it in probably a year and a half. So in reality, that is not an issue anymore. That's not. So it should. What we should do is have a baseline. Okay, like draw a line in the sand. Says these are common issues from 2019 and behind, and then we're going to keep track of going forward to see if these get less and less or not. And then as you see, and then we do use that to train contractors as far as we go to a commissioning meeting or any kind of meeting. We say, hey, these are issues we see every job. Please make sure you don't see these. If you got any questions, let me know. We'll talk about it, whatever. And then internally, as far as our process goes, yes. I mean, I've tried to utilize, you kind of determine what's more important, what the contractors always don't miss and what the contractors always do miss. And you spend more time on those. But as far as like streamlining it, I haven't been able to spend as much time as I would like to do that. But if you have any ideas, I would love to hear them. I mean, that in all seriousness, I'm not a competitor of anybody in this room. So I'm just basically spilling all my beans as far as how we do everything. And I'm doing that in hopes it'll help you guys, and in two hopes you can help me. If you see anything on this list that you think I can do better or spurs an idea, I mean, after I discussed this with some guys before, and they came up and said you can do I forget what it's called, but like basically it's a word search where like the most commonly used word shows up bigger. So like you can search all of your issues, and if chiller is it'll be bigger, then your words get smaller. Maybe that's an idea. I don't know, but if anybody has any thoughts, please let me know at any point in time after this. Yes, sir.
So you started off with your MEP guidelines, and I think you acknowledge that you're in a really unique position as the owner doing your own commissioning. So you, for lack of better, you can get away with some more things. One of the things you guys do is you actually have the contractors execute the functional performance test. And sometimes when we've done commissioning, and certainly when we do TAB, we get pushback on actually executing the functional performance test for people that think that's your job. And now, we've worked together before, just peel back the curtain, and I've executed your functional performance test, and I see the value in it. Do you get a lot of pushback when people say, like, you're the owner?
It's a little different scenario. I mean, so when I was doing third-party commissioning, it was all about the spec. You had to make sure the spec was, airtight. And it's still important for me. The spec is airtight as far as I'm concerned. But you still would have to go. If somebody fought back, I was like, well, look at your spec. This is what you got to do. And, I mean, it's unfair to me to say this, but I'll just talk to my construction manager and makes one phone call, and it goes, they kind of work it out. But I've had that some, but it's usually first timers. Guys that done it for the first time with me or with HCA, and it's like, that's not normal.
Well, and that was kind of my point. Is it probably should be part of your MEP guidelines. Like, look,
Oh, it is. It's in the guidelines, and it's in our commission kickoff meeting. We talk about it every time, but people don't listen. Yeah, we emphasize it, but people still don't hear it, because they're just used to hearing what they're used to hearing, so they don't actually listen to what I'm saying. So, yes, ma'am.
What's the sampling method that you use at your job sites?
The sampling,
Yeah.
we don't sample. We
You do 100%.
do 100%. You talking about like VAVs and things? Yeah. So we do 100% testing, but we test through trending. So, like, I don't sit there and look at the computer and at every individual VAV box. So we'll do trending before I show up. So. Again, I talked about the pre-functionals will be done before I show up. The functional tests will be done before I show up. All trending will be done before I show up, and I'll have reviewed that to make sure all the training for the VAV boxes are completed as well. We also do sound testing. I'll throw a plug in for sound testing. Before I got here, I didn't even know that was a thing. But HCA is very big into sound testing, and so that's another part of our requirements is to commission that we can test and balance. We'll measure the sound in NC curve, and we have a criteria that we meet for all that. So all that has to be done prior to us showing up. As far as sampling goes, we don't sample any of it.
Are you doing the lighting control?
We don't do lighting controls. Only if it's lead. But or in some ordinances or like city ordinances are requiring you to do lighting controls, so we'll do it then. But all we are concerned with, all I am concerned with, is mechanical systems, which I'm not saying is right, but that's just the way we are right now. Anybody else? Yes, sir. So the database is a third-party vendor that we purchased, and so like there's multiple databases out there. I will say, so I've been at HCA for 3.5 years. Prior to HCA, I worked for another company. We used a database. Got to HCA, we shopped around for multiple databases, so I've gotten very familiar with lots of databases. We settled on one particular one, but I gotta be careful. There's bells and whistles. There are different bells and whistles to all databases, but the essence, it's all collecting data, you know, and they can all give you the data. So I tried to keep this as generic as possible. Like everything that I've said can be applied to any database, but I did not write it. It was a third-party vendor that provided that. Yes, sir.
You guys turn that into any of your PM maintenance or maintenance information?
So good segue. So for commissioning, we use a third-party vendor database. Well, so that our maintenance side of HCA decided it would be a good idea for them to write their own database. So they actually spent a whole lot of money to write. So we don't use facility maintenance for this, but we do have a database for it. It's just not the same as commissioning. And it would be nice if we used the commissioning database because you can roll all that information right in there. And I've even told our guys, you know, we probably could still do it. I mean, again, a database is a database. And so if you get the information from one to the other, as long as you get them lined up and talking, it shouldn't be an issue. But right now, they're totally independent. Yes, sir.
I will be different. I am electrical, so I.
Okay, anybody else got anything?
Communication is everything, and all that, and safety, probably to our issues, prior issues, and for our site optimization reports, I can probably write 90% of them before I go to the job site. And how do you get the contractors on board and keep going on retesting and things like that? You'll go there, you'll tell them ahead of time, you'll get there, it doesn't work, you'll end up failing the test. It's hard to charge for additional visits because everyone wants to keep their clients and everything like that. And so you kind of keep good rapport, but you have to go project 101. So how do you deal with the failed test and the recall back and the additional stuff?
Well, so again, another caveat is that I work for the owner, so I'm 100% overhead. So when it comes to failed testing, there is no additional, like I can't even charge them because I'm getting my salary, but I'm not getting paid for that job. I'm getting paid to just commission projects. But I will say also, but HCA does take commissioning very seriously, and it's gotten better since I've been here. You know, we've been pushing the envelope, making sure they understand how difficult it is. Like we won't allow our hospitals to occupy space until we get commissioning completed because we've just learned over the years how difficult it is to go into a space and retest and recertify or correct first, and then retest an issue when it's occupied. It just takes so much time and effort. So HCA has bought off on that. So in essence, HCA is taking things much more seriously than a lot of clients out there. You know, some clients don't even know what commissioning is. It's just a lead credit, so they have to get somebody. And those are unfortunate because it's very difficult as a commissioning agent to work in those conditions when you're basically the enemy. You know, everybody else is trying to tell everybody how great it is and we're ready to move in. And you're saying, no, everything's wrong. And, you know, then the client, as you say, sometimes thinks you're the problem, you know, just because you're telling them the truth. So I don't have a good answer to your question in general because HCA is a little different that we have a commissioning engineer that can go directly to the construction manager and tell them the facts. Yes, sir.
Robert, from your previous experience to your HCA experience, don't you think the answer to that question is you are the owner? And you can go to your construction project managers and you can impact the cash flow of the contractor. That's or can you do that?
Yeah, yes, that it is, and we definitely carry a big stick with that. So, which is not something everyone shares.
There's we in our environment, we see varying degrees of support from the owners. And if they don't have if there isn't a financial impact, hopefully you would have contractors that would cooperate and things would go well. But when they don't, then hopefully the owner would help emphasize the financial impact to the contractors if they don't cooperate and perform. I think commissioning's about documenting completion, not creating another checklist. So it seems like to me the more difficult for us, the more difficult projects are those where the owners don't enforce the contract requirements.
Yes. Yes, unfortunately for us, I sit right next to if I go to the construction manager and he doesn't care, then I'll just go to his boss. If he doesn't care, I'll go to his boss, and eventually I'll get to someone who cares, and then all of a sudden it goes right downhill. So I do think that you got to get an owner that thinks commissioning is important, which fortunately for me, HCA is that way. And hopefully as more people see, if you got these one-off clients that build, they probably don't understand. But if you got clients that build and build and build, they'll probably see a common theme that commissioning seems to be the problem on just about every job, and so they'll start taking it more serious as they learn these lessons the hard way. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of I'm in an unfair situation to not give a great answer for third party. Yes, sir.
You're probably speaking to the choir here, but what are the overall benefits of all the database and all the commissioning, and what are the top 10 reasons why you commission?
Well, the number one reason I commission is so that we don't get any callbacks. So we have occupants that are healthy. We meet all of our hospital codes so we don't get shut down. I mean, because HCA's they're not in business for commissioning. I mean, they're in the business to make money. Well, excuse me. They're in the business for patient care, and one side effect of patient care is to make money. And so so any downtime we have, whether it be a chiller failure or air handler failure or loss of pressure, whatever, that's loss of revenue to HCA. So my number one overall job is to make sure that the project is designed and installed correctly so it can operate for the facility. Beyond that, we have efficiency concerns. We try to make it as efficient as possible, and make sure that can be maintained and accessed by the service maintenance facility for that can be a longevity of the equipment. So again, the reason for that is so the hospital can maintain online and again see patients. I mean, that's not 10, that's 3, but those are my most important ones. Yes, sir.
Question for you. You mentioned that you've got consistent systems and consistent control sequences across your facilities. I'm wondering how consistent they are with different facilities being designed by different engineers or under different energy codes. Do you really have consistency with all of your sequences and all of your systems?
In essence, no. And the answer is no, but not for the reason you state. The reason the answer is no is because HCA was founded in 1968. We own hospitals that were built in the 20s. We just bought a healthcare system in North Carolina in January that was designed and built prior to us owning it. So it was prior to our guidelines. So yes, we do have facilities that don't meet the guidelines. It's not necessarily because we only have 3 engineers that we use across the country. So we have meetings with them regularly. I meet with them all the time, discussing, hey, this is what this guideline says. You messed this up. Why is this repeatable? Why are you repeating this mistake? So our engineers are doing a pretty good job of meeting our guidelines, but typically the reason why we don't match is because of the existing facilities we may have purchased after the fact or something along those lines. And that does make it difficult for us. And it's more so when it comes to like chill water systems and things. It's a little more complicated than an air handler. So that's where you kind of get issues with that. But another issue I'll tell you is we want condensing boilers, and so we'll do 140-degree hot water temperature, for example. Well, we get these facilities that were designed 40 years ago, 30 years ago, heck, even 10 years ago, and their VAVs are sized for 180 degrees. But it doesn't matter. If the facility works at 180 degrees because they have to, we still tell our engineers, design every coil going in for 140 degrees, because eventually we're going to replace every coil in the building. And then when we get to that point, we can go to condensing boilers. So that's an example to say, even if we do have facilities that don't match our guidelines for those reasons I stated, we're still implementing them on any projects that we have on that facility, because eventually the whole thing will be made over and we'll be where we're at. The other thing I'll say about the guidelines, they do change. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying the technology doesn't change and people's opinions don't change of what needs to be in the guidelines and lessons learned. So we do have updated guidelines, so that's another aspect as well. Something that was designed, in 2012 doesn't match our new guidelines because technology has changed and all that. So, but in general, we try to keep our guidelines as best we can. All right, anybody else got anything? All right, well, thanks, guys. If you guys have any ideas, thoughts, or questions at any point in the future, please let me know. Contact information probably is in the guide somewhere, so just send me an email, text, find me after this. But thank you guys very much, and I think it's lunchtime.